Hello, hello. Thanks for joining me for Advancing Spark. And today we're going to have a look at SQL Analytics in some of the more advanced visualization options. So since it came out just a week or so ago, a lot of people have kind of opened it up. They've got onto the preview. They've tried to kind of drag and drop and gone, oh, these more advanced visuals don't quite respond the way I thought they would. So we're going to take a step through some of the more interesting ones. We're going to look at PivotTables, everyone's favorite Excel tool in the world. Sankey Diagrams, Starburst, some maps, word clouds, the kind of more weird and wonderful ones, which aren't quite as straightforward as drag the field into the place. So we'll take a look at that. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let us know down below in the comments if there's other things you'd like to see. Let us know what you think of some of these visualization options. And you know, some of them aren't going to blow you away. They're quite nice, they're quite fancy, but the options that we have are fairly limited. Again, kind of pushing that thing that this is a really nice, super lightweight, entry-level tool for doing some basic visualization. It is not a big premium enterprise. This is going to be your only BI tool in your giant enterprise company. So, expectations set. Cool. So happy December. I can't believe it's December. But at least now, you know, it's okay that I've got decorations up. Yeah, good. Okay, let's have a look. So I'm here, SQL Analytics. Again, if you don't have this yet, when you sign up to the preview, you'll log into standard Databricks, and then down at the bottom, you'll see that little kind of, that extra thing, which is a bit, oh, I need to, open it up. And then we can see, you'll get this little button down below to allow you to go into SQL Analytics. Again, you might not have that yet, but when you do, you'll be able to go and explore and have a play around. So I'm in here, I've got an endpoint already turned on. Again, endpoints are our clusters. They are the things that are doing the Spark jobs for us. It does need to be turned on. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to turn on currently. And then everything that we're doing in queries. So in order to build a visualization, you need to have some data. In order to have some data, you need to have written some kind of SQL query that brings back a result set. And then you map that result set into one or more visualizations. So I've got a few in here. Let's start with this one, taxi trips. And I've got some data that's been brought back. Now, again, it has cached this data for me. So it's gone off, done a query, brought it back, cached it, and now I can have a play. This is one of the larger ones. You can see down the bottom, it's got that kind of, you know, you tried to query 84 million rows. We're only going to let you see 20,000 of it, but it'll allow us to see what a pivot table looks like. So now I've got a choice. I can just go straight in here. We can click on this edit source button to see the SQL that I used to do it. So again, I'm not doing any aggregation. That's kind of bad here. It's assuming that you will aggregate most things before you put it into a viz. But I'm saying, give me my data. Go to my NYC taxi data, go bring it back, show it to me, then I can execute it. But since I've ran this before, see it was refreshed 6 days ago, but it's cached this data. I've still got a data set I can have a play with. And so when we're playing around and building visualizations, when we're having a kind of, you know, where we're experimenting and designing and trying to get things right, you don't have to be going back and hitting the data each time, actually. You can have run this once, got some data back, and you click add visualization, and we can build it directly on that cached data set without having to run that data. So it's kind of nice that we can go and have a play. Okay, so the things we're talking about, you've got all those ones at the top. And again, we'll put into another session looking at cohorts and counters and details and funnels and these other bits. I want to go more down the bottom because they are the more interesting ones, the more, I guess, the harder to get started with ones. So start us off nice and easy. We'll talk pivot tables. Now you should all know and love pivot tables from the wacky world of Excel. So we can say we're on visualization type pivot table. What do I want to call? I want to call it my fair comparison. We've got some things that we can play around with, but this is basically a pivot table builder here. So I can see a list of my available columns up top. I can see where I want it on my rows and columns. So I'm going to say I want to see, so fair amount up top. I want to see vendor name on the side. And I can do a quick comparison of which vendors charged which fare. You know, so vendor number 2, vast majority of doing that, but they've had some weird ones. The other 2, it's either 0 or 0.5. That's probably okay. So it's only vendor number 2 I need to question, say, why have you got that? You know, standard pivot table stuff. And I can have a play around. I can kind of, you know, filter it to certain ones. I can reduce the values that are coming in. I can change this. So this is by default just doing a count of how many of that combination is in that little matrix. And I can say, actually, I want you to do the sum. So this should be doing the sum of the fair amount. So I can get from the total amount and oh, it's actually not that big a value compared to what I'm doing. Kind of makes sense. You know, you can play around and have a bit of an explore. We can kind of say, what else do we want? I want it to be a heat map. Should be a heat map based on columns, on rows. So actually, where's the biggest value? Obviously, the biggest is in our totals. We don't have to do that. Let's switch it over and let's be based on our columns. I can see the largest ones are really on null values there. It's kind of doing a little bit of conditional formatting. Now, the problem with that is I don't have any controls. I can't say what the color gradient should be, how to design that color gradient. It's a super basic, do some color formatting for me, and I'm not going to give you any details about what that should be. But, you know, it works. Or I can say, I want this just as an exportable TSV. I don't use TSV, but we can do that, and we can make that as something that we can export if we need to integrate with something. So basic options. The main deal is actually this is just quite nice to be able to go and have a play with that stuff and expose these things into your dashboards. And again, all of these things are designed to be things that you can pin to a dashboard. So we can say, that's my thing. So for my dashboard, I don't want to see the controls. I don't want people to be able to be drag and drop. I just want the actual data. I want row column, not column total. Okay, go like that. And then we'll save. So a little bit of control, a little bit of stuff that we can play around with. And then actually, I'm going to save my changes in there to taxi trips. Let's go and make a new dashboard of things that we're doing. So this is going to be, let's call it Advancing Spark. And we'll add some stuff in here as we go. So we can go and bring in a widget. So we can say, actually, I want that thing that I just made, taxi trips. I've got my new fare comparison. So that's the visual name I gave it. I'd say add that to my dashboard and I get my little pivot table. And I can choose, you know, actually, I want it to be the right size for it. And that's then displayed part of my dashboard. I've got this pivot table that I built, and every time I refresh, I can either refresh it there and it'll go and update it, or I can go and set some kind of refresh on taxi trips itself and say this refresh schedule that you guys can't see. There we go, refresh schedule never. And we could say, I want you to actually refresh that occasionally. And then we can go from there. So bits and pieces that we can play around with to get into this stuff. Okay, so pivot tables, kind of basic, but kind of useful. Really, really quick just to do that matrix tabular comparison of a few different values. Kind of works as you'd expect. It is quite clicky, draggy, droppy. Yeah, it'd be nice to see some table formatting. It'd be nice to see some additional options, you know, kind of how I want that heat map to work. You know, some settings around what color scheme I want for my header rows versus my column rows versus my fonts versus my number formatting. You know, it's missing some of the niceties of it, but as a quick way of just having a play with this stuff, it's fun. It works. Okay, let's do something a little bit more interesting. So we've got this product cloud next. So I've got my data. I'm just doing a little bit of joining together of some data sets, VentureWorks type stuff. Main thing is I'm getting these product categories and I'm getting the product names. So I've got kind of a little combination of the data that I'm seeing, kind of a high level category, a low level category, and I'm getting some underlying data behind it. Okay. So I want to do that because I've already done a word cloud in here. But let's go and do that. So from my visualization type, right down the bottom, I've got word cloud. So I can say I would like a word cloud, please. This is going to be my product cloud. I need to choose which is the column that's got something to do with my data in there. And I call it stage 1 and stage 2. Let's clean that up a little bit. Call it something a bit more sensible. I've got product category name. I actually need to re-execute this. I was working on the cached version when I still had stage 1 and stage 2. That's gone off, ran my query. I've now got product category name, product name. Going to make a little bit more sense for my word cloud. Go back to my word cloud. So words, do I want it from the category name or the product name? Choose category name. And I can see I get this kind of instant, it goes off, looks at all my product categories, brings things back. And I can choose, have I got something which tells me what I should count them based on? So in this case, I'm saying breaks the biggest because it's got the highest totals. Or do I actually just want it to count automatically, in which case it's going to do a word frequency? So am I trying to do a word cloud based on how often that word appears in all of my different descriptions? Or am I trying to attach a value to it and say, you know, I want breaks to be biggest because that's where we've made the most money? So we can do that kind of thing. So I can say, which column do I want to source the list of names from? Is it based on my category names, my product names? How am I doing value? And then a little bit of control around Mountain's a big word, actually. I only want up to 5 characters in there. I only want up to 7 characters in there. And I can have a play around and say, what size of words am I looking for? Maybe things like, I'm getting some acronyms in there. We're like 3-letter things. It needs to be at least 4 letters to be a real word. Let's strip those out. So some controls to say, how we want things to appear. And then if we're getting some really small things in there, well, actually, it needs to come up at least 5 times. So we can say, what are the frequency limits to try and control the things coming in here? Do I want to literally everything that's ever been mentioned, or do I want to try and kind of just curate slightly what's allowed into my word cloud? So bits and pieces to have a play with. Again, more things. You see kind of some of the more advanced word cloud things, you can give it a shape to map to. You can give a control, should it be wide, should it be tall? How are you building that up? And again, colorings, I don't think we've got any control over whatsoever. So it's kind of just coming up with a default list of colors it puts in there. And it would be nice to see something a little bit more, pick up JSON theme, do a thing, being able to control what's happening there. Fonts, given we're talking about words. But it works. We can do a word cloud that's in there, as we said. Okay, next, let's have a look at something a bit different. So I've got some real basic subscriber data, right? So if I just kind of take you through my data, I've got kind of a user, and I've got kind of where they came from, what happened in their first month of being a member of this subscription program. So where they came from, what happened in kind of during their promo period, what happened in their first month, and then where they are now. I can see we've got a whole list of different things people can be. I've got this is adding all that up. So if I just actually get rid of that count, and then just get rid of the group by for now, and just do a quick, just to tell us all these different people, we get this kind of list of, here's a load of different people that have kind of, have they renewed, have they lapsed, did they upsell, essentially kind of a list of this kind of journey that these people have gone through. Now, you can see I've got that stage value in there, and that's kind of very, very deliberate wording. And I think this is something that's tripped a lot of people up when they've come in and started to work with this data, is when you try and use some of the visualizations, it's expecting certain columns with certain names. So in this case, we're trying to do a Sankey diagram. We're trying to say, of all my people at my source, where did they go through and get to? So I'm going to choose right down at the bottom from my Sankey, and you can see it's automatically picked up and used my data. And there's next to no settings. So I can go call this my subscriber journey. And that is literally the only setting that I've got for my entire Sankey diagram. But because I've got these columns, essentially this is the big hit. It's telling you it needs columns in this order with these names. So it needs stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are optional. I could just do stage 1 and 2, and then a value to tell it how many people should go that way, and then it builds it out. See, now for me, the ordering is, so in this scenario, I'm talking about renewed and upsold. That's my happiest path, right? They're the people I really want to look after. They are good. The renewed but didn't upsell, that's still great. They're my loyal subscribers. They're working with me. That is awesome. Lapsed in first month and lapsed in trial. They're the people I need to target. I need to figure out what's going on with those. How do I get fewer people in lapse and trial to stay on for the first month? And then how do I get people in that first month to stay on and renew? But I can't order that. I can't, to be honest, it's just picking up the order that's in the data. So I could force a sort order in there just to control and say, I want to sort by renewed first. I could kind of label these, kind of with, 1 dash renewed, 2 dash lapsed, 3 dash, and then add that as a sort order, and then kind of just control it within each of those groups. As it is, I don't have any controls to do it at the visual level, so I'd have to go and do that in my data set. In my SQL query, I could control this a little bit more. But it is what it is. It shows that I've got no control over color. So again, it's automatically picked colors. I assume if I switch the order of those, I would see different colors applied to renewed and upsold versus lapsed. But at least my ability to build that kind of journey diagram, my ability to have that kind of thing as something I can just put into my dashboards is quite nice. Kind of Sankey is a very, very popular diagram type, and it's really, really useful to understand complex journeys. Again, we could have another 5th layer that we don't have. But yeah, interesting. Definitely useful. But again, very, very basic. There's not a lot of customization we can do in that kind of visual right now. Okay, final one. What were we talking about? So we have, oh no, we've got a couple ones we could look at. Okay, so what do we want to see? I think my sales breakdown is probably going to be the one that makes most sense. So this is one that we kind of saw earlier. We've got rank sets. We've got, essentially we've got product category, we've got product name, and we've got a value. Now, if we go back and just take those stages out, this is what you're normally going to see, I guess, where we're like name. You normally see that as prod name, we'd have that as category name. And the thing we're going to look at is a starburst. And that's kind of like a fancy pie. So we've got our values, we've got a couple of categories, and we've got a value. I'm going to add a visualization to it. And we can say, I would like this to be a starburst sequence. And again, that's not going to work. It expects columns to be named in a certain way, similar to how we had with the Sankey diagram. So in this case, we've got two options. So we can either have kind of a parent-child sequence, stage, node names, and kind of just build it out almost like a DAG. Or we can have just a kind of flat list saying stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and the number of in that value. So in this case, that's why I had things named in a certain way. Here we have that stage 1, and they have that as stage 2. So we know in our starburst, we're only going to have 2 rings. You know, we could, again, have the ragged ring by having some nulls, some not nulls, that kind of stuff. But in this case, we'll just see 2 rings, and they'll be categorized among them. And that naming of those fields is super, super important. It would be great to see us able to map things in. Okay, so you can see we've got Sunburst now. We can see our different categories, and you can see kind of that bit up the top, how it's building out that highlighted category that we're on. So it's saying, well, that was the base category. Number 1 is wheels. Number 2 is that LL mounted front wheel. And we can see the percentage that went into there. So again, really nice, quite tactile visual, quite kind of a nice thing to be able to include. But again, it would be nice to be able to, well, one, just have those options and drag in my categories saying, well, I want product category to be stage 1. I want product name to be stage 2, and then just build out that visual as we go. And again, it'd be great to be able to do some kind of color formatting, to be able to source the color hex from another kind of additional column, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's fairly basic how we're building this visual out, but at least we can do it, right? You know, so we can actually build out our Sunburst. This is our product breakdown, product sale breakdown. Wow, typing. There we go. And add that in. And I would like to add that to my dashboard, please. I'll call it my Advancing Spark. Okay. So again, we can build out this list of all these different interesting visuals as we get them, as we build them out. Didn't add my word cloud, but you know, you kind of get the idea of how it's working, how we're building out these different visual types. The final one I wanted to show you is around maps. So I've got this query built before. Again, edit my source, can see real basic SQL query behind it. And there's loads and loads of things in here. Just AdventureWorks address is in here. So we can see we've got kind of for each sale line, we've got address, city, province, and then country. So country is what we do this on. So I can say I would like a visualization. Again, I can choose in here. We've got 2 different types of maps. So we've got the chloropleth, which is the, I want to shade certain areas a certain color based on a value kind of map. So you can see it's picked out. I've got a blank map ready to work with. This is one of the ones that's a bit more plumbed in. So I can say of all these different things, I've got my country in here. Where's that going to be in my list of stuff? So it's going to be my country region. And I need to tell that what it is. So is there going to be the short name for the country? The full name is going to be ISO. In this case, I think it's the full name. Then we need to map a value to it. And that value should be my line total. And there we go. So we can see we've got some color coding, basic heat mapping based on the totals that I've given it. So super basic. And if I had all my different things, if I had my ISO, US, UK, FR, all that kind of stuff, USA, GBR, you know, if you've got that baked into your code, you can kind of plug that in. You can choose different maps, which, you know, kind of as a person in the UK, that's not a fantastic list of maps, but we can have countries, we can have USA state map if you've got states to map into it. You can have kind of Japanese prefectures. But yeah, for me, I can have a country. But at least we do have lots of settings in terms of how we can customize this one. So this is more kind of, it's slightly further up that list of visualizations. And so there's more settings, there's more things we can do. It's one of them baked in ones. So we can do colors, we can pick out the different steps, we can choose how it decides to do the gradients of the different color mappings it's got. It's not going to work that well with 3 different choices. But we can have a play. Background color if we want to make it absolutely horrendous. Oh, lovely. I'm going to have a play and kind of choose what we're doing in there. Formatting. So all these different bits and pieces are actually quite nice. We can choose how it builds out the legend, where the legend actually sits. Again, you can't see that well. There we go. So where that legend is going to sit in terms of the alignment of it, is it going to be top left? Are we having to play around with it? The tooltips. So when I'm hovering over certain different bits of the map, how does that look? So that's going to be, okay, actually, I want that to be, that should say country like that. And then when I go, you can see I've built up that tooltip. So it allows you to build up some customization. The same with pop-ups. Pop-ups is when I want to pin something. So I want to keep that little speech bubble so compare things on that map. There's customization you can do to try and make that a little bit more baked in, a little bit more kind of bring in some more stats to it, bring in some other values into it. It's quite nice that you can kind of have a play with some of that stuff. I'm going to do some bounds, so if we're saying, actually, you know what, I don't want to see the US, I can just do it like that. We can bake that in and have that as hard-coded default. So whenever someone comes in, it bakes into just the part of the map that you're interested in, whatever that should be. Okay, cool. So we can save that. We can say, well, that's now my map. And again, I can take my map, I can add it to my dashboard. And I think that's kind of the way Databricks are expecting people to work. That's kind of going around that cycle of stepping into your query, editing the SQL, building out the next things, doing all the settings, attaching it to whatever dashboards it needs to go into, and then kind of moving to the next one. So you have these building blocks, which are your queries, and then you have kind of your dashboard, which is your collection of visuals from lots of different queries. And so that refresh button is going off and running each one of those queries that it sources this data from. So if we set up a refresh, you've got the different refresh cadences. Are you doing it on the data set level, aka in your queries? Or are you doing it on your dashboards, in which case it runs for all of the different components that go into it? And it all breaks down in between it. I think I've probably spoken so long that my cluster's turned off, but it's all good. Okay, so that was a brief whistle-stop tour of some of these different things. I think the main point to get across is some of the more advanced visuals, your Sankey diagrams, your sunbursts, they're expecting that real strict naming convention in your data set. They're expecting you to have stage 1, stage 2, value as these different building blocks within the returned data set so that it knows how to map it automatically into the various different visuals. Now, I'm hoping as this tool matures and as kind of, we go past full GA and kind of into kind of production, we'll see some more niceties around that start to appear. We'll see some of those, kind of actually be able to build it up and actually make it a little bit of a nicer experience to build out these visuals. I think they've stuck with just make sure people can build these visuals full stop as a starting point, and then we'll see it grow and we'll see more and more functionality go in. So that is the end of my whistle-stop tour. So we've shown you pivot tables, we've shown you maps, we've shown you how to do Sankey diagrams, how to do starbursts or sunbursts. Remember, sunbursts, I think. And lots and lots of interesting things in there. So I'd say easily, just as soon as you get hold of the preview, go and have an experiment, go and have a play, go and see what works for you. As always, do not forget to like and subscribe and let us know down in the comments what you think of the different visuals, what visuals you would like to see going in there. Kind of what your general opinion of this is, because it is so new, so fresh. It's interesting to see how people are reacting to it and how people are picking it up. For me, I'm very much on there are so many little bits of incremental embedded BI and analytics I can do. So as a data engineer, building out data pipelines and doing lots of data processing, there's a ton of stuff I can do here. So I can monitor my ETL, so I can have a look at what's going on, so I can give data quality visualizations out to my user base without having to go and buy premium BI tools, without them having to have a license for Tableau, Power BI, Click, Look, or whatever it happens to be. It gives me kind of a lot more flexibility. Just build out these nice reusable dashboards within Databricks without having to pay a separate license. That's kind of the point for me. Again, if you're coming from a mature, premium, experienced enterprise BI point of view, you'll be looking at some of that and going, really? I can't just click and drag. I can't. That's taking features away from what I currently have. And it's true, because this is like an entry-level, lightweight, cut-down version of doing a lot of BI and dashboarding. It is not trying to compete, saying, throw away your Power BI, throw away your Tableau. It is trying to say, here's a super useful tool if you do not have those, and you don't want that extra integration step. All right, so that's all for today. So let us know what you think, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.